My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called F.A.T.E, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your fate. Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of F.A.T.E. How's everybody doing today? On today's show, I have Maryann from Revealing Light. She's joining me all the way from Sydney, Australia. She is a psychic astrologer, a channeler, a tarot card reader. She has a new book out called Revealing Light, How Cancer Illuminated My Divine Blueprint. So much to talk about today, gang. Maryann, welcome to your F.A.T.E, my friend. How you doing today?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm really interested in your story because you've obviously read my new book. Thank you so much. But yeah, we do have some parallels, so it will be an interesting conversation, and I suspect other people will have many, many parallels in what we're going to bring forth. Yeah.
I agree. When I was reading your book, it resonated with me a lot because although I don't have any powers, I'm not a clairvoyant or anything, but I did find myself to be very sick for a elongated period of my life. And through that process, I found my spirituality. I was an atheist for most of my life. Like, religion I grew up in kind of like a not a great religious situation, more hellfire, brimstone, very, very judgmental, very, it did not align with who I was in my gut. So I pushed back on that and went entirely in the other direction. So
I have seen your astrology chart, and your story does not surprise me at all. And this evolution into this podcast and finding your spirituality is exactly what your soul contract undertook when you came into this life. So it resonates very, very, very strongly with what you're saying. But we can get into that later. Yeah.
I mean, that just gave me chills because I have really gone through this podcast isn't about me, but but I feel like I have gone through such an evolution, particularly over the last few years, that I don't even feel like I have just changed and evolved and expanded and, in every single way you can think of in my journey. And I do feel at this point in my life, I am on my soul path, that I was always supposed to get here in a very soul contract kind of way. But let's turn the conversation back to you. But we'll talk more about that. But I always like to start at the beginning. Can you tell us how you became to know that you were a gifted person, that you had the ability of a clairvoyant? How did that come about for you?
Well, from my earliest memories, and I'm talking around 2 to 3 years of age, I was having prophetic dreams, although I didn't know that's what they were. I was also having what I would call, I didn't know what it was, but images in my mind. So like a film, playing out in my third eye. It's there all the time with me. It's not very far away. So it's right, the subconscious is right there that I can access. So that happened, but at school they told me, when I used to sort of say things, and then I am a writer, so I would write them down. And I remember one particular composition, we used to call them composition, which is a little one-pager writing thing in year 5, which is, I'm not sure what your equivalent is, but it's the first 5 years of school. So is it middle school where you are?
That would be elementary school. Middle school's more like 12 to 14 years old. And
elementary. So I had this really good relief English teacher from the UK, and I wrote this composition about, or this little writing thing about what it felt like when I wrote, that I went into another place. I described it as another place. And I said, from that other place, I mean, I just trusted the teacher. I loved her. Miss Ralph, her name was. I just loved her. And I wrote about what it feels like when I see these pictures. We all handed in our little one pages, and she called me up, Maryann, could you come up and see me? I thought, what's she's going on? And she said, this is what you've written. Is this what happens to you? Is this what, you know? And I said, yes, I go to another place. And from that moment on, I don't know what she was thinking, but before they would describe it as Maryann has a vivid imagination, that's what in a Catholic school they put it down to. But she just nurtured me. She opened up her own personal kids' library to me. I had a key to that. I became, I hate to say it, the teacher's pet, but she took me under her wing and she concentrated on getting me to write scripts, write little excerpts for plays, write everything. And she saw the benefit of bringing out the creativity. And whenever we go to the creative side of ourselves, we access the subconscious. And the subconscious is where we have our connections with spirit. It's not the conscious mind, the computer hard drive, it's the subconscious. And so she unlocked that. But what happened, because I was in a Catholic school and not a spiritual school, and because I didn't have access to shamans and clairvoyants and mediums, that part just got put down to being a writer. And so I kind of went through thinking of myself, my identity being the writer. Meantime, at home and growing up, I was still having the premonitions. I was still having the clairvoyant images. I was acutely sensitive. I was an empath. So people would come into the room and I would know, I'm not going to say know what they were thinking, but I certainly perceived what they were feeling. That made me very uncomfortable as a kid. And they knew you can't hide that, and that makes people feel uncomfortable. So I became a square peg in a round hole. I became that. And that was hard as a child to deal with because I had no mentors. The other thing that happened was I saw the outline of spirit. I've always seen that from a very early age. And that scared the living daylights out of me. So one of the things that happens when I make videos for YouTube is that we'll see orbs in this room. The viewers can see them. There are winged orbs, there are round orbs, there are all sorts of orbs. There are orbs coming out of my chest. There are orbs coming out of the tarot cards. On my website, for anyone that's interested, there's a little picture of a winged orb. If you go to the landing page, go hit the winged orb sort of little message thing on the front of the landing page and that'll take you. And you can see it quite clearly. That is not an unusual thing. I will see spirit around this house all the time. And sometimes I see them in the corner of the room and then I'll tune in clairvoyantly and I'll know who it is. There's a lady with long dark hair, not brown hair that is around me a lot. I suspect that's one of my passed over loved ones. My mother makes herself known to me. Her calling card is touching my hair. So I'll be reading or doing something on YouTube and then I'll feel the hand on the head. But what these orbs do is they allow people to see evidence of the afterlife, of another dimension that is not 3D. And that then gives them faith. You and I, because we've been through that, Catholic
process,
fire and brimstone, original sin stuff, through to this far more gentler, evolutionary type, well, for me, evolutionary type of spirituality, where we get I get tangible tangible proof every day. That's been the result of my cancer journey. But yeah, so getting back to the childhood stuff, I just buried it. And it wasn't until I was always interested in this stuff. I read earth energy, I read about ley lines, I read about, you know, chakras of the earth, whatever the spiritual subject was, I read, because I'm a learner. As a Sagittarius, I'm a learner. But it wasn't until the actual cancer journey that I started to come into a full circle back to the beginning and understand who I was. And so there was that acceptance. There was, you know, before I was fearful of it, I became less and less, the more competent I became in using that, because during the cancer years and healing years, I studied with a shaman, I studied with a medium, I studied with several astrologers. And the medium that I studied with was actually getting readings from me during the during the mentoring sessions, which was lovely because I was happy to do that. Yeah, and the more I use it, the more honed it gets. And so it's a powerful thing. It's certainly sometimes not a comfortable thing, but it is also a very healing thing for me. So to express who I am. And so cancer was
Yeah.
that trigger. I look at it, it took so much from me, but it did wake me up. Yeah.
That is the thing about an illness, and I've been through it myself. I've been through the ringer, and I've been up and down, and I'm still I feel sometimes that you're always in a state of healing. You know, I feel sometimes like I don't know if I'll ever be fully healed from what I went through, and I kind of had an autoimmune thing, and it affected my brain, and like a lot. I went through a lot, and I think maybe I'll always be in some sort of path of healing, but is excruciating and hellish and terrible, and every single time I fall down and I don't think I can get back up, it always expands me in some way. I always learn something from it, and it really is a beautiful thing. And it's like almost looking at something that's super tragic and you don't want to go through it, but there's beauty on the other side of it
Mm,
in a way.
mm.
You don't see the beauty when you're going through
No.
it. You want to just not be here at all, and it's a struggle. It is only when you get on the other side and you look back at all the gifts that it gave you in a really weird way that you didn't see it. And that's my perspective. I mean, we have, everybody has their own separate journey, but like it took me a few years to acknowledge, see that. But in a way, it it saved me in a way,
Mm, mm,
you know, in a very strange way. Like I was kind of heading down a path where I don't I was definitely not awake. I was definitely much more, much less compassionate.
mm,
It really has taught me an immense amount of empathy and compassion and loving myself.
yeah.
And it opened up this whole nother world of consciousness, of exploring who we
Mm,
are, of of really understanding the nature of reality, how it works. You know, it is just it's been such an incredible journey for me. But I did notice when I was reading your book, as I was reading it, I was like, oh, she said she was like a clairvoyant when she was young, but then she doesn't really get into that aspect of herself really until you became ill. So my question, I guess, is this. During your
no,
journey prior to your
mm,
cancer diagnosis, A, when did you stop being fearful of spirits or
mm,
anything? B, what was your relationship with religion and with spirituality?
mm.
Um, and those are my two questions.
Okay.
I don't have a C.
Okay. So I've always, as I said, been sensitive. And as a writer, when you're using those creative things, but my world was the mainstream world. My world was working as a newspaper editor, the first female newspaper editor of a regional daily just outside of Sydney. And I was immersed in fighting for people, in uncovering stories, and I won some state awards. And I just devoted all. of me to that and my family. And then I worked for government. You can't get more mainstream than government, I can tell you. And then I worked as a government consultant thereafter. So it wasn't really, I was still reading and indulging myself in looking at the esoteric and the metaphysical. Um, but I was still fearful of spirit, like of the unknown. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed with cancer and you confront your mortality, and you would have too. It's a gut punch and it is a severe wake up. It's like you can't be asleep after that. If someone tells you if you don't have this radical surgery, because that's what I had, radical surgery, radical treatment, you will not live. And if we do all these things to you, there's a chance it could come back. So what are you going to do? Where are you going to go from there? The force of that, I still had children at school and I was the main breadwinner. So it was such a shock. And at the same time, my elder sister, who I was very close to, had been diagnosed with the same cancer in the same place, but at a later stage. And so, this whole death and destruction dogged me for about a decade. It was just one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. So when I was in that hellish landscape, I started to notice things around me because I was given no other choice. Where else was I going to look but to hope? And so whether I was walking, started, walking daily, whether it was in communication with others, because we think spiritual is an alone thing, but it's not. It's about connecting with others as well. And so it's finding the magic in the communication, which is where I think your thing is. But anyway, it is finding that with other people. And so the right people came to me at the right time. The heroes, the saviors, the people who went out on a limb for me, the physicians, the doctors, the nurses. I fell into a safety net of spiritual connection, but also spirit within other people. And
Yes.
I guess that's where I went because I had no other place to go to. But what became abundantly clear to me was that I could and should be working more with spirit in a way that connected other people with their spirituality. And that's when I started really taking it seriously. So really, I started during treatment studying with metaphysical practitioners because I knew without a doubt the wake-up call was so strong that I knew that I could not go back to I tried for briefly 3 or 4 months to go back. It was disastrous. And I just thought, okay, I hear you. I hear what you're telling me. And so the spiritual platforms were born. And then we get to the second part of the book and the third part of the book. So the first part of the book, I guess, for value for people who are undergoing real trauma, whether it's, I had a viewer say to me, every time you say in the first part of the book, my cancer, when I was diagnosed with cancer, I substitute that for when I lost my son, when my son died. And she said, and those things that you're saying are resonating with me. And so it is that trauma. How are we going to find our way through trauma? And I think I was in a place where it just stopped me. It stopped me in my tracks. It stopped all that conscious stuff. I no longer worked in mainstream workforce in high performing positions. It stopped me in my tracks. And I think when you are stopped in that way, you start to listen and you start to see in different ways because you're inner reflecting. You're in a position of inner
Yes.
reflection.
Yes. It is such a number one, you find out real quick that, you don't know everything in life and you start opening up to things. Like for me, I was kind of a little bit of arrogant. I thought I knew it all. And then when I got that sick and I was trying to strive to improve my health, I was, I had to surrender to the fact that I, uh, needed to open myself up to things that I didn't necessarily subscribe to at the time, like energy healing,
Yeah.
like, you know, doing
Yeah.
Reiki, or I did, some plant medicine like combo. And when I started opening up and stepping my toe in that spiritual community for healing, and then when it worked, I started understanding that there was so much more going on that I had no clue about, that uh, illuminated me to the next journey in my life. And I do think that's the one thing about whether you're lost a loved one, you divorce, death, illness, trauma in general, I think really does put a lot of people in a place where they can allow themselves to seek more than what we just see in our everyday lives, if that makes sense. It really does open you wide up because you're just searching for anything to solve whatever you're going through there in the world.
We asked for meaning as to why this was happening, and we went on a discovery and we found it. And yeah, Reiki, I did Reiki 1 and 2 as well, and I used that so much on me in those healing days. Massively. I read and practiced everything that cancer sufferers who had cured themselves through various other modalities. I practiced, meditation daily. I through the full force of my personality at healing. And after I finished radiation, because I was meditating, I don't know if you've heard of Ian Gawler, but he is a cancer survivor, wrote a best-selling worldwide book. It's a while ago now. I think he wrote in the 80s. But he used a particular meditation technique daily. I used that technique, and when I went to look at the pathology post-radiation, they said it's only microscopic. We couldn't find any tumour there. There was only microscopic cells left. So there'd been almost a remission. Yes, the radiation was brutal and powerful, but I had combined it with this other stuff as well. My sister had the same. No, I shouldn't say that. She didn't use these other modalities. Her cancer was at a later stage than me. But not everyone has, suffice to say, as good a result from that treatment as what I got. And yeah.
I do think that healing is definitely physical, but I don't think we pay enough attention to the spiritual aspect of healing, the energetic aspect of healing your body. And that is that's a piece of the puzzle that I think that is missing in Western, and a lot of what Western medicine is that we are energetic beings. And that if you're not only taking care of the physical, biological part of us, you need to incorporate meditation, breathing, breath work, Reiki. All of that is healing to the body. And I think that it was included. I didn't think that stuff worked. It was only when I was like, I need to expand my mind and trust somebody else and take advice from other people as how to fix myself, that I started experiencing benefits from it. And then I just started gorging myself on all things spirituality, just reading books, watching podcasts, watching Gaia Network, watching everything. And I have never felt such a pull towards something. And that's what brought me to this podcast, is that I was learning so much. And to me, it was such new and exciting news that I was like, I want to talk about this. Other people should know about this stuff, And that's what got me excited. My podcast isn't even a year old yet. I'm super jealous of yours, though, because I'm like, you have a massive YouTube channel, like over like 130,000 plus followers, or subscribers. And I'm not there, but like I I have, I'm hoping, I'm manifesting. I would love to touch as many people as I can with this information. I do feel, and I think you would agree with this, that we are in the middle of an awakening of sorts. We're in a new age, kids. We're in the age of Aquarius now, and we're going to see a lot of crazy stuff happen in our lifetime during this juncture. We're seeing it now. I'm in America, so hello, lots of things are going to break, but I do feel like more and more people are having trauma. They're finding out who they are. They are starting to awaken to what we are, and that is something that has been suppressed in our consciousness for for a very long time. But why don't we talk a little bit more about, I loved in the book the feather story.
Yeah.
I was like, I love this story. Yep. I want to kind of mention it on air. You have a lot of synchronicities in your life that you talk about, and one of them is the feather story. What is that story?
Yeah, it's still going on. It's an ongoing feather story. But during the cancer years, I said I used to walk a lot, and this inner reflection and turmoil. You question, why am I here? Why did this happen to me? All of those usual questions. And I'd look down and I'd see these white feathers in front of my path. There wouldn't be just one. There'd be like a trail left out for me. And so then I started to notice. I thought, well, what are these feathers doing? And I was in a meditation group at the time, and my meditation teacher rang me and said, I have a white feather here for you, Maryann. And she said, come pick it up. And I kind of thought, okay, now I'm starting to notice. My husband is very much almost an atheist, almost, not quite, but almost. And I used to tell him about these white feathers. We did the daily trek to Campbelltown, which is a 3-hour round drive for us, for radiation daily for 7 weeks. And he would drive me down, and I was telling him about the feathers, and he's such a skeptic. He'd say, oh, you just want to see them. As soon as he finished that sentence, a white feather came out of the air and hit the car windscreen. And I just looked at him and I said, see? He said nothing else. Nothing else after that. So it was really interesting. Yeah. When I ride my e-bike daily, I do 10Ks, and we have now a lot of white cockatoos. They're called corellas here. But they're a white cockatoo. They're actually an albino galah. But anyway, I had one growing up, and these are new connections I'm making. And he was given to me by my aunt, and he stayed with us. I think he only died maybe a decade ago. So he was there right through my life. And I'm riding along on my e-bike, and I always see the two cockies, and I always think of my parents when I see them, and they always fly straight over my head. And I took another route, and I went down, and I kind of stopped because I felt there's something shadowing the sun. And I looked up, and there was the white cockatoo in front of the sun, in the one place, staying there. I looked up and it was just there, stationary, like it was moving its wings. And so all this light was coming around it, and it was an unmistakable thing.
Yes.
They don't do that. They're skittish. They yell all the time. They fly here, they fly there. I've never seen one stationary like that before. And so now it's a lovely thing. Yeah.
I mean, I've had a couple of crazy mystical happenings since I've started meditating and kind of being in the spiritual zone, and things have started. I mean, some of them I'm not at the point where I feel super confident though talking about it. Like I did do one show a few weeks, I was at the beginning of the year actually. Me and my friend Kelly were out hiking or whatever, and all day when I looked back at my camera photos, there was this green orb everywhere. I almost want to send it to you like on air and have you look at it, because I thought it looked like an energetic being, and yet everybody was like, no, that's your camera lens.
Yeah, that can
That's
happen with
not.
the camera lens, but you don't think so. I can tell you.
I don't know.
I can tell you that a lady has sent me. She wanted to remain anonymous. I won't give her name away. She lives. She says she's in America. That she lives on the edge of a gateway to the spiritual realm. She sent me a series of photos, many photos, with horse and carriage shapes, people in top hats. When she researched the history, that forest was a roadway, orbs of all descriptions. She's like a guardian, and that's why I can't reveal who she is, or I would keep her. But she showed me, she said, Maryann, if you ever doubt it, just take a look at these photos. And there, I mean, I was gobsmacked. This was, yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna send you. I'm literally gonna do it live on the air. I'm gonna send you one picture of the orb, and then I don't know. To me, it looks like you could see the outline of the orb, and this is just one picture. Like, I have videos of this orb. I like, Anyways, that happened to me, and at the end of this very night, it was my friend Kelly and her boyfriend, and both of them at the same time. I didn't see it, so I can't verify it. Like, both agreed, both saw it, both started freaking out that I was by the fire, and I moved my hands, and a white butterfly just came out of my stomach area and floated up into the trellis.
Oh, that's not your lens.
And
sorry, that's not your lens.
You see it? You got it? You got it?
That is too large to be your lens, and the actual light around it, that is an orb.
And you can see it like has wings,
yes, it
or
does.
whatever.
Yeah, no, that is not your camera lens. You can take that to the bank. That is an orb. So let me explain what orbs are. What I think orbs are anyway. They're spirit. Okay, there's someone in spirit there. It could have been elemental, could have been attached to the land, so that all sorts. The spiritual realm is very, very diverse. I get winged orbs. I mean, closest thing to fairies. My grandmother was Irish. This sort of thing could have been an earth, something to do with the earth, an elemental. The other, I guess, manifestation is passed over loved ones. And so a lot of my orbs, where you see them behind me, are my family in spirit. And it can be also spirits attached to this land that I live on. Yeah. So there's a wide-ranging explanation for orbs, but they are spirit. They are spirit.
It's kind of miraculous once you start tapping into your own spirituality, and kind of like really magical things start happening to you that are almost like, makes me feel like I'm on my right path. That like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm going to keep going. It's when you open up to spirituality, it is really remarkable how magical your life. Magic. How magical it really is. And it's like we're blind to it. And then when you start paying attention and opening to it, you're like, wow, we really do live in this really metaphysical, mystical, magical world.
Exactly.
And nobody knows,
Well, some of us do. Well, one of the things, Christy, is two ways to get there. Is meditation. And I would wager that since you've been meditating, you've opened some kind of thing up within yourself, and creative pursuits. So two ways can bring you closer to the spiritual realm. Definitely meditation. I do meditation daily before I do a podcast. So when you see me, it's after a meditation for various reasons, protection and otherwise. But It's
I mean,
magical,
the
yeah.
other weird thing is, I don't know if you could tell because I have my show light on, but like I am starting to get like a little raised bump here. And I thought I was just wishful thinking. I've noticed it and I'm like, what is going on there? I don't think it's a bruise. Like, what is that? And I was FaceTiming with a friend and he said, what is that in the middle of your forehead? What is that? I go, oh, you see it too? And I swear to you, Maryann, I think my third eye is opening or some kind of something is going on with my third eye. And sometimes when I look at it, it looks like a heart to me. And I said that to my friend and I go, to me, it looks like a little bit of a heart. And he was like, oh, yeah,
Well,
I see that. I can see why you
we
say that.
already
And I was
know
like,
that
it's just
it
interesting.
is, and we already know that what some people would think of as impossible is actually possible. If your third eye is starting to activate, are you at the point where you're having more dreams? Because dreams are also pay attention, write them down. That encourages that as well. And also, if you're, say, in a parking lot and you're just there in the wheel, you finish your shopping and you're daydreaming a bit, and you suddenly see or feel or think something, intuition comes when the moat door of the consciousness is lowered, and daydreaming, and when you move into that unconscious subconscious realm, can be also another way of accessing that.
I 100%. And I am having, I, I do listen to my intuition way more than I ever have in my life. I really have. You mentioned creativity. Like I have never felt more creative. I've got two other very creative. I got a book thingy that I'm doing. I mean, I have never felt more creative in my life. I have never felt more like I have those, whatever you want to call them, juices flowing more. And I'm not scared now to act on
Yes, and that's
anything.
the thing. That's the thing.
That is the
Yeah.
thing. Like all of a sudden I have an idea and I'm like, well, this guess is a great idea. I'm just going to do that. You lose your fear to, and you just do. It's weird. It's weird, but you lose there's no fear of you trying or doing something because in my personal belief system right now is that it is all about belief. Like it's true what they used to say, whether you can believe it or that you can do it or not, you're right. And a lot of what happens to us on our exterior reality is based on our own belief systems. We like tell our own story through our emotions and they show up out there in our outer world in a really weird, magical way, you know? Do you think we're in the realm of like the Great Awakening? I do feel like more people are doing it, and realizing.
Yeah, hardship will always bring you to a point, or adversity, or real. Not just it'll last a day and then it goes away and you're back to your normal life, but real adversity and hardship will always force you to look at other ways, because it comes down to survival in a way, survival, and then thriving as much as you can. And this Great Awakening, well, a couple of years ago, they said, well, we're going to go from 3D to 5D, and we're going to split off and separate timelines and all of that. I can give you a rational, logical explanation for why that has happened now, because we've been forced. It's growth and evolution brings us to a higher way of looking at things, a spiritual evolution. And so I think through great adversity, look at what's happened to us. We had COVID in 2019-20. We had worldwide recession, supply chain shortages. Our lives were turned upside down, enforced isolation. Everyone confronted their mortality because you were just 2 steps away from running into the person who had COVID prior to the vaccines being developed. It just woke everybody up. And then after that, we dealt with a world that was pushing boundaries and invading sovereign countries, and there was war, and we then had to we still are having to confront the possibility of a world war with all these these conflicts. And then what's happening in your country, my God, it's so many things are breaking, as you say. So there's this, are we waking up? Yes, we are. Is it this feel good, feathery, lovey-dovey, we're just going to ascend type stuff? No. We are evolving. We have been pushed into through events, through circumstances, through change, through breaking things down, things breaking apart. We have been forced into an evolution. What I see in your country, because again, you're a part of our world, is now people are mobilizing. If they don't like something, they mobilize. But there's also the opposite side of stuff and coming back to whole. I don't agree with everything that my friends say or do, or my family, but we are forced into negotiation and compassion and empathy as well. And so the evolution isn't just, my political side won. Evolution is about coming together. Evolution is about understanding where someone else is coming from. Thankfully, I've evolved a lot. I used to be a real hothead. Maybe that's the Sagittarius stuff in me, but I am far more compassionate now to someone who doesn't believe the same things I believe. I go, okay, what has caused that belief? Why is someone thinking like that?
Yeah. I also like to say, like to think, it feels like everyone is looking through a different set of eyeballs in a way. Like we all don't see the same exact thing. So I try to keep that in mind. And we are a lot alike, Maryann, because I used to be super harsh as well. And I am a so much more kind, gentler version of myself. And that goes back, rounding back to a lot of beautiful things can come out of an ugly situation. One of the things that I'm going to start talking about on this show is right now I see a lot of fear happening, particularly in my country, about what's going on because so much is happening it's happening rapidly. And I'm in LA, so I already had a nice big full dose of fear at the beginning of the year because we had those crazy fires. I've never had an alarm on my phone where somebody was telling me to evacuate. Like that is the most bizarre feeling. And then you look around and you're like, I don't know what to take. It's just been a bizarre year from the get-go, like straight out of the gate. But I do think that I am trying to approach it with the least amount of fear as possible because I just don't think fear serves us collectively, consciously, because I think it promotes more of the same. If you know what, like more of that lower vibrational energy in our consciousness is only going to bring more bad juju, more bad vibes, more bad outcomes in a way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're human beings, so we do react and we do get triggered. But if we get triggered by everything that's coming at us at this time, we're not going to survive the next 4 years. It's not. It's just. It's funny, coming back to the harsh, judgmental stuff. Really, your ego gets knocked around, doesn't it, with illness? It gets reduced.
Yes. It gets ripped out of you, turned around, spit out, stomped on.
When you lose everything, your ego gets, put back in order.
You get real humble real quick.
You do. But when we're like that, we're not being kind. If we're not being kind to others or compassionate to others, it's a reflection on our lack of nurturing of ourselves. Yeah.
I agree.
And that, again, is another lesson that I talk about in the book. And I think how to manage this current adversity is to really self-nurture. Now, a lot of my viewers just switch off from the mayhem, and that's a good thing. You can still keep in the loop by watching a very good, high-quality podcast, political podcast, but you only need to watch one, one a week, and you already know what's going on. But really understanding that your space is your home, your garden, your house, your family, your community. Don't get in front of yourself. My sister used to say to me, don't, one step at a time, don't get in front of yourself. So you really have to try and bring yourself back to the present moment in adversity, because again, that's survivorship. You need to be nurturing yourself. And so, if people finding themselves fearful, it's not ignoring the adversity. It's just bring yourself back to your own space, your own ground, your own community, and stop tuning in for a little while. Yeah.
And stop giving your power away to circumstances that you don't have any ability to change in that moment. You really end up giving your power away to fear and to, there I am trying to stay informed, but I am not allowing my emotions to run away with anything that's happening on the telly at that time. I'm staying right here in the moment, and right here in the moment, I'm doing just fine. Everything is okay.
These are all,
and I try.
Yeah, these are all techniques you and I use to get through our illness.
It's exactly right. That I would not wish illness on anyone. I really wouldn't. It's an extremely difficult journey, especially when you're losing the ability to maintain a normal day to day. When your freedoms are taken away, with your ability to function is taken away. When you don't know if you're ever going to get normal back, when you think you might die, like there's so many things. But there's so many. This is gonna seem weird, but there's so many reasons why I'm grateful that I went through what I went through. I have a lot of gratitude. It was a gift in a very bizarre, strange, twisted way that taught me so much about myself. It taught me about who I want to be. And it opened me up to a world that I didn't even know existed, that alone is just continues to unfold in these magical ways that I'm still in the middle of. It's still revealing. Revealing light. That's exactly what's happening to me.
Yeah. It's piercing the darkness, isn't it? It's allowing the light of awareness and enlightenment to come through, because the darkness is not stopping it anymore. Yeah.
It's that going through a dark night of the soul of sorts, like it really is making you confront all of your demons, making you confront your lack of love for yourself, your lack of self-worth, who are you? I mean, it is just a terrible, beautiful journey,
It is. And it's interesting. I used to beat myself up because once self-awareness and awareness, widespread awareness came through, I used to think, well, why did I have to get sick to get to that place? If only. But evolution is about becoming. It's you can't do that unless you experience. And so strength is the result, isn't it? Forging of So
I mean, there's just something about us humans. It's like our moms trying to tell us something because they've lived a life and they're wiser, and we don't listen. We don't ever really adapt or change or evolve unless we experience it ourselves. It seems like it needs to actually physically, mentally impact us before we will make the great change in our life,
people, you've just explained reincarnation.
That's exactly right. It's true, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that, but you could hearken that to reincarnation, like coming here time and time again, learning the lessons in order to expand and grow our consciousness. That is what we're all supposed to be doing.
Yes. And, I think I do believe in reincarnation, people choosing.
Me too.
I don't think everyone automatically reincarnates, but I think, we choose to come down here to have that physical experience, and it is brutal. But the beauty and the light that comes through is just a glimpse of heaven, I think. I don't know. I think in a way we've got to experience what is happening in the world now to put it back into order, to not back into order, but to evolve. and come out at
Yes.
a stronger, more resilient, and hopefully kinder, more humanitarian place. Well, that's my hope anyway.
Yeah. More connected as well. Like to really understand we're all here for a sole purpose. We're all here to learn and grow and maybe our institutions are at the point where they're going to break because they're not functioning for us collectively any longer. And we're going to see a lot of pretty bad stuff maybe happen.
Mhm.
I hope not, but like I'm preparing myself emotionally for that. But I think through all that, sort of like an illness where it's going to be terrible and traumatic and everything, you're going to see beauty on the other side of it.
I think
But it is going to be a bumpy ride,
I think
man.
you're
I
already
do.
seeing that. I was waiting for people to wake, like I was watching after post your election. But you're having
Mm.
a lot of action now. If people don't want their rights taken away, they're prepared now to take to the streets. There's a lot of organisation going on, a lot of pushback, a lot of resistance, and it's
Yeah.
working as well because just the same as what people feeling disenfranchised, perhaps with your last president. It's only action that's going to get change and agreement and negotiation and compromise. And that's one of my hopes, that the current US government, instead of bulldozing and creating enemies, will start to sit down and talk with Americans, not just their supporters, but all Americans.
Yeah. Yeah. It is going to be an interesting journey as far as what is going to be happening here in the States. I am pulling for us. I am pulling for us to come together. I am pulling for us that our greater good will come through at the end. They've just done a very good job at manipulating a lot of the population here. It's very censored. It's very, you know, we're very
Yeah,
disconnected, divided
yeah,
society. Very
yeah.
like hatred, very
Yes.
like, and I have plenty of people that I know and love on the other side. Um, I don't. I'm not one who has cut anybody out of my life. A lot of people have just cut them. I can't. I'm not doing that. I mean, I grew up at a time when I was young, like it was rude to talk about politics. It
Mm,
was
mm,
rude to talk about religion. You didn't do it.
mm,
And I really think that was like the best way to
mm,
handle
mm,
our societies is that is personal preference within and to exploit that, which I think a lot of people have, to draw our divisions out instead of focusing on this. We have so much more in common than we will ever have that makes us different. And we don't focus on any of that. We just focus on what makes us
mm,
different. And it's just, I hope we get back to the days where we can respect each other's for our differences and they're not so exaggerated or hyped up or whatever to get votes.
mm,
It's the whole system just seems weird. But anyways, let's go ahead. You talk a little bit in your book about evolutionary
mm.
astrology.
Yeah, I do.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
I've never heard of that term. Can you tell us what that is and why it's so important to like mapping our lives and forming us?
Yeah, so evolutionary astrology is quite simply astrology through the lens of the soul's journey in this reincarnated life. So it looks at the natal chart as a blueprint for what you came into this life to do. So, what you're here to learn, also some ancestral patterns that are coming down as well, some patterns that you might want to break. And Chiron, as I said, it's an asteroid, very important to me. It's in my ninth house of learning. And Chiron in Pisces, which Pisces is a very spiritual psychic sign. And then I have a bunch of other planets in the eighth house, which of course again is the not so much the occult. When you say the occult, people go ooh, but spiritual matters. Things like shamanism but death and transformation and reinvention. So that eighth house is very important. Sagittarius is also another highly spiritual sign, psychic sign. They're Pisces and Sagittarius, both ruled by Jupiter. I won't get into too much detail. Evolutionary astrology can tell us where our greatest lessons lie and why things are happening to us in the way that they have, and make sense out of chaos even, but also give you a little bit of a heads up about whether you are fulfilling your life purpose in this life, or whether you're utilizing even what you've brought in, the knowledge and awareness you've brought into this life. Sometimes that remains closed to us, and then the awareness brings all that knowledge back. But put simply, it is what we've chosen, our life's purpose in this current lifetime. Evolutionary astrologers will look at the natal chart and be able to glean information and insights from that perspective.
You say that the Chiron is your Achilles heel.
Mm, mm,
What does that mean exactly? Like that's good. That's
yeah.
what do you mean? It's the thing that can make you or break you in life in a way, or like
It's Chiron was the
okay.
Chiron was the centaur that was rejected by both his parents. His father Kronos raped his mother, a nymph, and he came out as a centaur, and both of them rejected him. So he learnt that rejection from birth. Later on in his life, he was hit with a poisoned arrow from Hercules. And it was a wound that never healed because he was half God. He couldn't heal his human wound. And so Chiron became known as the wounded healer. So he is both the wounded, but also the healer as well. Once he was rejected by his parents, he was taken under the wing by Apollo, the god of love, and nurtured. And Chiron then became a physician, a very wise um, person that could, or centaur, I guess, that could heal. He went into the healing arts. But he always had these wounds, these mortal wounds, himself. And so that's where that compassion, developed. He had tremendous compassion and wisdom. So it is around, the patterns, those wound patterns that develop sometimes from previous lives, sometimes from this early life as well. And we focus on, evolutionary astrologers focus on Pluto, the god of the underworld, the deep dark, the things buried in the chest at the bottom of the sea, in a cave, and the chest is closed, and it's about opening that up and looking at where your wounds are, and you can't begin that healing process until you know that, and then moving on that healing journey. So in that ninth house, I became very analytical. I studied, got 2 degrees and a postgraduate diploma. So I was very much in the learning, but orthodox learning. And Chiron in my ninth house showed me that there was another way of learning, another spiritual matters to study, and to become just as learned in that respect as what I was in an orthodox respect. So I think it is opposing my third house, which is the communication house. So in a way, you can look at it and you can say, well, she learned, and she studied, and she brought forth, and she's now giving that back through her podcast. That's in her divine blueprint. So I can look at that and I can see that. I do have your chart, Christy, and you do have Chiron in Aries in the 6th house. So 6th house, it's okay. It's all right. It's all right.
I'm a little nervous.
No, it's okay. It's, I've got planets in the 6th house too. The 6th house can be health, ill health, can also be public service and career. And Chiron in Aries would suggest that Aries is the sign of identity, self-awareness, becoming who you were meant to be. Arians are on a journey to do that. But it would suggest with Chiron there in your 6th house that there was, going back to your early life, some difficulties around you expressing yourself, being who you are, like almost being dampened down. In a fairly, I won't go too far, but this has probably been a lifelong thing for you. But it was always going to happen. It was always going to happen because you too have Jupiter and Venus and the North Node. Well, you have the North Node in your third house. So this communication that you're doing, you would have already, I don't know anything about your previous life, but you were already been a good communicator in a mainstream life, okay? So we bring these skills to this spiritual work that we're doing right now. But also we've learned not to burn ourselves out with that too, because you also have high G there too. So we get really passionate about our work. We go hell for leather with it, this spiritual work as well. We need to be careful. We need to pace ourselves. We need to make sure that the energy is there's enough energy there for ourselves. Yeah, so I see your Chiron is there in your sixth house in Aries because you needed to learn about your own identity and express, more importantly, to express that identity, express who you are. Now, how did that go?
That went perfectly well. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that through my journey of who I was, which that's basically what I do for a living is communicate. I work in film and TV in my prior life, and I am the orchestrator of
There you
the
go.
show. Like, I tell everybody what they're doing,
Yeah.
what time they're doing.
Yeah.
I tell everybody where to be there. Like, I am the communicator hub of, so that was spot on. And I also feel like I'm finally through my journey, never felt more myself, never had, I might get upset, never had so much love for myself, and cared about myself, and instead of beating myself up, like I really do just tell myself every day I love myself, and that I'm going to be good. And I have very much been somebody who maybe didn't feel like I was my whole self. And now I feel more myself than I ever have. And I love myself, and I can say it, so it's been such a journey. It really has.
Your sun and moon are conjunct. So were you born on an eclipse? Was something very, very close anyway.
I don't know.
They're conjunct and Mercury's conjunct. So in Aquarius. And so a lot of what happens to us is about timing and being ready for what is presented to ourselves. Pluto's moved into Aquarius. This is the Aquarian age.
This is it.
You've got, let me just tell you, 2 grand trines in your chart. They are fantastic. You will succeed at whatever you're doing, you would have succeeded at it. You're Saturn up in your 8th house in Gemini, again, the communication. I'm not surprised you were organizing everybody. And it's trining your beautiful sun and moon and Mercury in Aquarius. What you're doing now is absolutely the right thing for you to do. You deal with the unexpected very well, and I think you deal with things that come out of the blue very well. So with that, there's a spiritual place for that now, because our world is full of the unexpected and the change. And it's hitting us in a very, very hard, aggressive way at the moment. So keep doing what you're doing, because it's exactly what you're meant to do. But like me,
I do.
Pace yourself.
Yes. I mean, I will say this podcast I have never felt a pull to do something more in my life than this podcast. I feel, even when, last year I had a kind of a rough year with my health in a lot of way. I went through some more trauma. I went through I had some severe stuff going on last year as well. And even no matter what, when I had an interview scheduled and I knew I had to do it, and maybe I was having a bad morning and I was having problems with trying to get the energy to do it, I would get ready and everything. But once I sat down and started talking to somebody, it's almost felt like I I was in such alignment with what I'm supposed to be doing that my symptoms would go away. I would feel better. And I would even say it a few times on the show, like, it's weird. I could be feeling very terrible. And then I get into this and I start doing the dialogue. We start talking about, I mean, I've been talking to the most fascinating people, like so interesting. And I'm loving it that my symptoms evaporate, even if it's only for 3 or 4 hours. I feel more normal. And I have felt such a draw towards this. I feel more myself doing this. And I actually feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. I really do. I don't know if it's going to be a podcast forever or if I'll get other opportunities. I don't know, but I feel like this world is where I'm supposed to be swimming. I feel most pulled in this direction. And I've learned that you are always supposed to go in the direction of your highest excitement, whatever makes your most excitement, do that. So that's kind of like that's the road I'm trying down. Like this is what I enjoy doing. So it's been just so fascinating. We're coming up on an hour here, but if you got time for a couple more questions, I do want to, you're a channeler as well. We didn't get into that, channeling.
Yeah.
And in your book, you pick a few people that you have communicated with via channeling. And it was like Nostradamus, huge, Edgar Casey, huge, Robin Williams, Freud. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about the channeled messages. Like Nostradamus, he said a few things like, people need to understand that there's much more in their immediate environments that they see. He said the subconscious is the doorway to another realm. Can you talk a little bit about your channeling of people and how that happens and what you're learning?
All right. So when I channel people, people say, oh, can you channel this one and can you channel that one? No, it's like they come forward to me. And I wasn't even thinking about channeling Nostradamus, but I went for a walk on the golf course, because this is about listening and noticing and allowing the pathway for you to follow the pathway. But I was just walking one, it would have been sort of winter morning, wouldn't have been winter, whatever morning, spring morning. And there's a rose garden, beautiful red roses. And I stopped and I picked the petal of the rose and I rubbed it between my fingers, and all this liquid came out of it. And it just got me to thinking. So I went and I Googled. I thought, what's going on here? I've just this pull, as you describe it, to follow it down. So I Googled red or roses, rose juice, healing, trying to find why I'd been given this, why I was feeling such a strong pull to it. And I, of course, found out that Nostradamus used rose petals to make a vitamin C, because the liquid that comes out of them is like rose hip. And that he used that liquid then to make, during the plague, he would give them this liquid. And so I thought, okay, I'm game, I'm up for it. Let's see if I can bring Nostradamus through. So I didn't do it willy-nilly. I had no idea that COVID was going to break out. And when he presented, he came through again. You see them very clearly, like you would in a film. And he came through very clearly. And what I look for in all my channelings is what they call evidence, that I'm actually getting something or someone. And so he gave me that evidence that I needed. They all do in some way. I go back after the channeling and I Google, did James Dean have a loft in the country? Because that's what he was showing me. And sure enough, it was his retreat that he went to. And I described it perfectly. Robin Williams, was he obviously a runner, but I saw him running down the road to a farmhouse where an elderly woman was ringing a dinner bell. So then I Googled that, and sure enough, that's what his grandmother used to do, and he'd run down the driveway. So I look constantly. Edgar Casey, when I was channeling him, I said I knew not much about Edgar Casey. All I do is look at I knew he was a healer, knew he was the sleeping prophet, but no details, no details. And I got very strongly, I saw the light being, it was like a bridge, and I don't know why it was a she, but a feminine energy came across a light bridge to him, a being of light. And that's what gave him that information. Sure enough, I Googled it after the channeling. When he was asked how he gets this information, he says a being of light would come to him and give it to him. So there's all these, I've got a good analytical brain, but this intuition stuff, I don't want it just to be, oh, yeah, she's saying she's talking about Nostradamus. I want evidence there that I have been talking to him. The other thing that he gave me, getting back to his channeling, I saw him very, very, very clearly. He came forward. He took me to his stone house. It was stone, and he took me to a garden where they'd fashioned garden furniture out of stone, and we sat there and we spoke. I found out later on, I looked up his house. It was a stone house in Italy. So, it was in Italy, not in Italy, wherever it was, France. And we spoke about these things, and he talked about a coming plague. So when people go and listen to that channeling now, a year or two before COVID, they go, oh, okay. Yeah, there's prophetic things in those. What am I doing? How is this happening? Well, a few things are happening. I think I am getting the energetic soul vibration of this person. I think that's definitely happening. But I'm also taken back through time, and Nostradamus was able to travel through time to the future. That was his gift, and that's why he could prophesy so accurately. There's a time thing where I go back to a residual energy or place that their incarnation is at. So that is happening there as well. But yeah, they're exhausting. And you bring this stuff to a mainstream audience, and you run a risk of people calling you a charlatan or whatever they're going to call you. But I like to bring the evidence. I like to bring the receipts as well. Yeah.
I was kind of interested in that very thing. Like, what do you say to your skeptics or do you acknowledge them at all? Do you just say, okay, thank you very much?
No, I do. I do acknowledge them because I think it's important to do that. I went back on my 2024 predictions. Like each year I do an annual prediction. And I went back and I laboriously went through that video and noted down all the predictions that I made out of all of them. And then I made a video on it. Now, that won't get as many hits as what the predictions actually get because people,
right.
However, it was important to put it out there because I found that out of all the predictions I got, there were only 2 incorrect ones and 98% of them had already happened. So I sort of keep myself honest. I always say, I'm human. The information that comes to me, a prediction is just a prediction until it happens, and then it becomes a fact. So we can't say before it happens whether it's there or not. Once it happens, we can say you got it right or you got it wrong, or you miss. I don't think spirit gets things wrong, but I'm a human being, and the concept of time in the spirit, there is no concept of time. And it's how I interpret it. Maybe spirit was telling me this will unfold in a different way to what you're presenting, and in a different time to what you're presenting. But at the time, whether it's my, human ego or my human flaws will get in the way of that information. But by and large, I'm more often right than wrong. And that's enough for me. In my 2025 predictions, 2 days before the South Korean plane crash. I predicted that. And so when people see that happening in real time, they go, oh my God, the
Yeah.
plane, she said, not in midair, on the runway, the plane breaking. Oh my God, and that's not to say, oh, I'm really good or whatever. It's to say that spirit will give you information prior to an event. If you're listening carefully, you can pick up on it. And I guess I've always been a really good listener, spiritual listener, from the time that I was little. And in fact, when I was going through my illness clairaudiently, my father was yelling my name in the middle of the night. He's passed over. And I'd sit bolt right upright because someone was yelling, Maryann, Maryann. I hadn't been diagnosed then. The cancer was there and I didn't know about it. So, there's also a thing with listening as well. It's really important to listen and see the things that aren't obvious. So again, the more you do it, the more highly tuned you become. But yeah.
I'm really hoping that as I continue down my journey, and maybe my third eye is starting to open, and maybe I am going to start. The one thing that I truly do all the time now is I find myself sitting in silence a lot because I used to turn on the TV or I turn on the radio or I'd listen to a podcast. And now my morning routine does not involve any of that. It involves getting a cup of coffee, going out on my porch and sitting down, talking about what I want to experience that day, thinking good thoughts and listening and being in silence and just kind of being still. And that was a practice that was not I wasn't even capable of doing that. Like my brain was just like, like I couldn't have sit still long enough to even enjoy the silence. My mind was just rapid pace fire. But now I find I am in a much slower pace. I'm kinder to myself. I'm just more tuned in to me. And I'm hoping maybe it'll, maybe I'll become magic at some point. I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Well, daily meditation is one way to get there, and so you're doing the right thing. Yeah. And this self-care that you're doing absolutely should yield. It will yield, not should. It will yield so much richness.
I'm excited about the future as much, as many reasons there are to be fearful of the future. I really am rooting for humanity. I really think that, from maybe bad circumstances, the most beautiful things can arise. I feel that way. And so I don't look at all the disruptions and the chaos as necessarily being terrible. I look at it as, things need to break before they can be rebuilt or rethought or reimagined. And I think we're going to be seeing the breaking of some things so we can build something new, better, stronger, more aligned, more spiritual. I do think that there is going to, out of all this hate, is going to come a lot of love.
There has to be. And intuitively, that's, that intuitively. I know that intuitively. I reckon a lot of people, if they stop and think, will understand that this is a terrible process, but out of it comes something better. Yeah.
Yep.
That's the way life is.
It is. All right, last question, and it can be a short one because I know I've kept you over our time, but are we going to be okay, Maryann? Do you have any big predictions for 2025 for this show that you can say, hey, you know what? This great thing's going to happen out of all this? Or how do you feel about the future, being the magical person you are?
What we're seeing is guardrails falling right across the world, and obviously the worst coming through in various places, and that is messing with our stability and also our humanness. We're confronting AI and the rise of tech. This is Pluto in Aquarius that you're seeing right now. It's not all wonderful. It's not a return to the 60s. Are we going to be okay? We have, if I look at the astrology chart, Mars is opposing Pluto at the moment. So the god of war opposing the god of the underworld. People are pushing back for what they want. People are becoming more resilient in adversity. And I think it will result in a more equal world, like a fairer kind of world, which would address the all political sides of the spectrum, would be fairness, equality, and making sure that everybody gets what they need. I
Yeah.
think it's the end also. In time, it'll be the end of the oligarchy. I think that that's being exposed and that will end. One prediction, I think that the ADF in Germany will it will make a gain, but it won't be elected as the government. Okay, so it's going to be kept out in Germany. And what is happening in your country, unfortunately, is inspiring the world to say we don't want that chaos because it's
Yeah.
not sustainable. And once it
No.
starts to hit the hip pocket, it already has, and people get their wallet burning, money burning through their wallet, and they're having trouble surviving. You watch
Yeah.
political views change.
Real quick. They'll change real quick like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Maryann, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you. I find you to be
No,
magical, and I would love to have you back on the show. There's so many more topics that we could
no.
discuss. It's just spirituality and channeling and astrology and tarot. We didn't even really even
I do
talk
have
about
my
tarot.
cards here. We could have done something.
Yeah. I mean,
Anyway,
I would love to, to do it again sometime if you ever have
yeah,
another book.
yeah.
Pick up her book, gang.
Oh,
Revealing
yeah,
Light,
it's here.
How Cancer Illuminated My Divine Blueprint. It will, especially if you have gone through any type of illness, trauma, really anything like that, it will give you hope. It will enlighten you, and it will, maybe put you on your path. You just never know. Um, on that, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week on Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment. Thank you so much, Maryann from Revealing Light. Check out her YouTube channel. It's amazing. It's called Revealing Light Tarot. She's got tons of subscribers, so make sure you check her out on YouTube as well. And we'll see you next week.
Thank
Thank you,
you. Bye
Maryann.
for now.
And that is a wrap on this episode of Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment. I want to thank Maryann Weston for coming on the show and telling her story. I found her to be absolutely magical. We aligned on so many things. Even after the show, we stayed on and we chatted for like an hour, and our energies are aligned. We have a lot in common. I really hope she gets the chance to come back on the show at some point. I'd love to talk to her again. Pick up her book, ladies and gentlemen. It is called Revealing Light, How Cancer Illuminated My Divine Blueprint. And if you are going through an illness, a death, a divorce, anything like that, I would highly recommend you picking up this book. It is a great source of inspiration, um, a sense of support in that, particularly if you're feeling alone in your traumatic event that you're experiencing currently. Go ahead, pick up her book. She will shed some light on you, give you some techniques, let you know you're not alone, all of those things. She really is talented, truly gifted. But even Maryann, it took a traumatic event like her cancer diagnosis to bring her to her awakening. You do have to be shaken to awaken. And she even had these like amazing gifts from the time that she was very young and was seeing spirits and orbs and having these visions. And it was only with her illness, with her cancer diagnosis, that she started really looking within, that she started really understanding what and who she was. It's kind of remarkable, and I do feel like there are a lot of people out there that are starting to be more inquisitive about the nature of reality. not be satisfied with what mainstream is offering them anymore. This endless cycle of working and football games on a Friday and Netflix at night just to pacify whatever stuff you got going on in your life. Like, I just feel like an entirely different person from when I was living in my life where I was not living consciously at all, where I wasn't really paying attention to myself, my own emotions, what I was feeling, what I wanted. I was just being distracted with the shiny, bright things that were happening outside. So I'm hoping many more people start. I don't want them to go through the trauma. Like, that's not fun. Awakening, I guess, though, is not fun. And like we said in the show, sometimes you have to go through some very terrible things to get to beauty. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now in life. And I know that there's a lot of people right now that are just so filled with fear and doubt and just insecure in general about what's coming up for them, whether it be losing their job or their way of life, or the fact that there's just a chaotic energy in the air. There is, and it's not just here in the US, it's everywhere. There is this intense, chaotic energy. I feel it. Maybe I'm more sensitive to energy. I don't know. But there's a lot of reasons to be fearful. I know I have some myself. I just encourage you to know this. Your vibration is going to pull into your reality whatever you think, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're focusing on. So I would remind you, and maybe I will remind you at the end of every single show. You'll get tired of me saying it and hearing it, but I really want folks to start to understand, grasp, and receive that you are a reflection of your reality. You know, part of the reason why you see so much chaos in the world is because it's kind of, we tend to focus on negative things. We tend to focus on all the worst of us. We tend to focus on the the worst scenarios that happen, and it creates more of it. And I want people to be aware of what's happening around them, to stand up for good, be kind, be unafraid to protect somebody that is more or less powerful than you, I should say, not more, but less. Be that person. But to be fearful all the time, you're just going to create more of that feeling in your life. Whatever you focus on grows. You're a reflection of your reality. If I have learned anything, it is I've learned that. So I'm not scared anymore. I don't think it serves me. Does not serve me at all to walk around and be scared that I'm not going to get a job, which I'm concerned. But I'm not scared every day. I live in this knowing that if I'm aligning with higher vibrational feelings, gratitude, love, creativity, joy, that's what I'm going to create in my reality. So even though we might see some very gnarly things that we should not sit in silence about, at the same time, we can't live in fear of these things. We have to be grounding ourselves, meditating, looking within, and sending as much love as you possibly can beam out of your body to everyone on the planet. That's what I do. I do. When I'm meditating, I send love. Conditional love to even people that are fucking idiots and I want to choke them out. I even send those people love, because to hate them, why? It's for what? They are on their own journey. They could be new souls. They could be just very spiritually unevolved, unconsciously living, zombie-like almost. And all you can do is send them love and light and, wish them well. I wish everyone well. I want us all to succeed. I want everyone to make it, not just me. I want us all to make it in your own way, whatever that means to you, with no judgment. I don't know. All right. I'll keep reminding you of that because I'm sure there's going to be some stuff coming up in our world. And I'm not saying I won't have my moments, but when I do, I will recognize it. I will breathe deep and I will, look within. I will center myself. I will ground myself. I will understand who I am. Understand who you are. Get on your path, people. It's now the time. It's the age of Aquarius. Let's go. All righty, gang. With that, I'm going to leave it there. I can be reached on Instagram at F.A.T.E podcast. I'm going to start showing up more on social media. Why not? So follow the show. Follow me. Let me know what you think. If you have any awesome ideas, I'm all ears. I am going to continue to raise the vibration of this planet as much as I can. We'll see how it goes. And welcome to your fate, everyone. We'll see you next week. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, tell a friend. Do all the things, please. I would love to be able to continue to do this for as long as possible. So, with that, guys, we'll see you next week on the Fate Podcast. Mad love. Bye-bye.